Steve, not ready.
Nope.
Zoom in.
We are late. All right, it's 6:30. I'm calling this meeting to order. Let us stand for the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, Madam Clerk, please have roll call.
Mayor Bachman,
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Knudsen,
Present.
Trustee Smith, Mayor Trustee Valentine,
Here.
Trustee Stelter, Trustee McInnes,
Present.
Trustee Schwartz.
Here. All right, we can continue. Next thing on the agenda is pull the agenda. Can I get a motion, please?
I move to approve the agenda.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Presentation.
All right, that motion passes. All right, announcements. Well, I'm going to announce that yesterday was the first celebration that the town had of Indigenous Peoples' Day. And it was so new that we had employees showing up, not realizing that they had the day off. So it was interesting. So anyhow, it was very cool that we are able to do that now. All right, does anyone else have an announcement they would like to make? All right.
Just one.
Oh, yes.
The crew from Front Range did a lot of work on the Jumbo Mountain Trails this last weekend, and they rerouted South Gully Trail to avoid one of the ditches and stuff. And so they had a real good camp out in Apple Valley. The BLM was really great in providing food, restrooms, equipment, and tools, and all that stuff. So, and people were just raving about how much fun they had out there. So, and it's a nice trail. I ran it this morning. It's
Oh,
pretty good.
great. Very cool. All right, thanks to them. All right, next on the agenda is public comment. This is open for any topic not included under actions and presentations with a 3-minute time limit. Would anyone like to speak? Yes, Ms. Watson. Your magic light bar.
So I'm on the planning commission now, and I do not believe I can be on the zoning board of adjustment. Not quite sure. I don't think the statute allows that. So I believe that you have an open position there. So just, I don't think I have to resign. I'm just not on it, right? Okay.
I don't know if that's up.
Okay, for what it's worth.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Watson. All right, anything else? All right, next up is the consent agenda. Can we have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
You have a second?
I second.
All right, any discussion? Yeah.
I just have one question on one of the minutes, and it's on page 9. I'm not sure which one that is. Oh, thank you. It's, there is an acronym at the bottom of the page, NCB. Hang on, let me get to that page. I'm sorry.
I didn't know to do with that one. It is, that was notes that just didn't get taken out of there when I put in town attorney cotton bias. And then while we're at it, if it's okay, it was also pointed out to me that I missed the resolution of a motion in that same set of minutes, and that is corrected in the new final ones. It was on the DOLA grant thing, so I just forgot to put in there that you guys voted on it. So.
I didn't get it either. I had it circled.
Okay. All right, is there anything you want to talk about in disbursements?
I'd like to bring up that we're going to withhold payment of a check to Phoenix Rising Resources. We'd like to get more information as to what has been taking place in July, August, and September.
So would you like to amend your motion to accept the check disbursement?
Sure. I'll amend the motion to approve disbursements with a reduction of $9,940 to Phoenix Rising.
All right, do we have a agreement on the second?
A second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, that motion passes. All right, next up is the town administrator's report.
Okay.
a lot in here. So I apologize for getting it to you early this morning. I started at 9 o'clock last night on what I had already had as a draft and continued on with it till it was done. But you'll see Doris Avenue, the sewer line replacement is complete. I did explain that we are going to go after or submit for reimbursement to our DOLA Tier 1 EIF for those funds to come in. What we'll probably do is credit the account that was debited to show that there is, money that's being replenished within that fund. We will put forward for that after the last check clears from K&D Construction. Again, K&D Construction, during our September 26th board meeting, they received glowing reviews from residents on Doris. It was the first time in my career that a contractor received praise during a public meeting. So typically, I've gotten some praise, in an email form, but this was during a public meeting. It was pretty incredible to see that we have good contractors working for the town. Corey was our field superintendent. I acted as the project manager for the town. I think that whole project went off without a hitch. At our last meeting, we also approved an emergency repair on Main Street. I believe Roop is going to start pretty soon, tomorrow, to repair that collapsed sewer main down on Main Street. If you go to the next slide. So there's a lot to talk about in finance, right? So we've got our fiscal year 22 audit that has started. We are working to get our auditors a very clean trial balance. And there are a couple of outstanding items from credit cards that the town no longer utilizes, but they're still open. And so we're still trying to get access to those accounts. It has been a long, drawn-out process. And I hope that we come to a resolution in pretty short order. We've submitted certified letters to this bank. We've also sent faxes like they asked us to. The last thing that we may have to do is drive to Telluride to speak with somebody in person, because that's the closest branch. Right? So we're trying to wrangle control of that account so we can close out fiscal year 22 and make sure that our trial balance is accurate for all auditors. That has been happening alongside a number of other projects. You've heard that our meter reading is automated. We're going to do another test run this week to make sure that before our next meter read that everything's working fine. And if there are any changes, we can, or things needed, we can take care of them before our guys go out and read the meters. And that process should be automated from the way that we read the meter all the way into how it goes into our general ledger for accounts receivable. We did our auditor that we selected is Hinkle & Company. They are working already. We've been giving them information so that they can, again, make sure that our trial balance is clean, but they've got some preliminary things that they're going through. They'll check on internal controls to make sure we have adequate internal controls in place. And I'm certain we'll receive a questionnaire in pretty short order. Some of the other items that we're waiting on are WEX bills. So before we went to this P card with United Merchants Bank, we used the fuel card. It's a WEX card. And there were some outstanding bills that we paid the bills, but we didn't have the backup, and they're looking for that backup. Once we have that again, that'll be a clean GL or a trial balance to get. We have changed our process for encumbrances going into the end of this year. I'm requesting that department heads don't buy anything starting December 1st. The only encumbrances that we ought to have are things like utilities, fuel for vehicles, payroll, those kinds of things moving into to fiscal year 24. If there's some larger purchases that we're wanting to make, we want to make them in November ahead of that December 1st cutoff. It'll make it easier on us in the back end, trying to close out this fiscal year. So our audit will be a lot easier for fiscal year 23. So just so you're all aware, I owe you a budget by October 15th. And so we've been working on that budget as well to try to get to you by that deadline. But we're also working on our fiscal year 22 audit and starting to prepare for year-end closeout. So there's a lot of things happening at once. And I explained in my report that our ERP system hasn't been the easiest to work with. And part of that is the way it was set up. So there was some different mapping with our general ledger and our chart of accounts that just didn't match up or jive. The hardest part was we didn't have a human resources module, but it's available. We just didn't utilize it. That would have made it really easy to understand what the per cost for each employee would have been. Instead, I've created a spreadsheet that shows all of those expenses by employee. I tried to put something in the report, but it's such a long spreadsheet that it didn't look right. So it's available to you if you'd want to see it. We've started using the capital budgeting module from ClearGov. We had a department head meeting today and I had to extend our deadline because I learned that like Sam, I didn't even give her request for access. So now she has it, but she does have a request for next year that she wants to put in, and our department heads should be able to start putting in some of those capital requests. That's not operating stuff. It's like we need a vehicle or we need tools that are, and I explained this, not your $1,500 and less tools. That's operating. If we're talking, a $4,000 spanner wrench that you guys have already, they've purchased one already, that would be a capital request. And I'd ask for that form to be filled out. So that's kind of the process we've been taking. And it's moving along, but there's a lot of moving parts. And Ruben, you can, let's see. On top of all of that, by October 16th, I also have to have a 20-year cash flow ready for our project needs assessment to go for our state revolving fund. And what that cash flow is specific to our water utility and taking into account some of the utility rate increases that you've already approved by ordinance and how that plays out over the next few years. There were a couple of scenarios that were presented. I think it was RCAC presented those scenarios. Y'all approved them. We'll put that into that cash flow analysis to see what it will take to pay for the loans that we're looking to take out to complete our water infrastructure projects. So those are all moving kind of at once. But if you go to the next slide, you can see a sample of what the new budget will look like. And so this is just the administration department. The only thing I need to finish out personnel services is what our SUTA rate is. And so that's our unemployment tax. Once that's done, I can get an accurate forecast for every department on what our expenses are going to be. But you can see that instead of it being a really long spreadsheet that kind of was convoluted, we've made it pretty straightforward and a true budget. So a budget doesn't end in like cents, right? They're more rounded numbers. That makes it easier during the budget process. And one of the things that I've added, so anything in green, you see kind of with that green highlight, those are things that have been renamed or have been added. For example, retirement benefits used to be called pension benefits. It's the only pension that we have is on the police department, but we're more generalizing it as retirement benefits because not every department has retirement benefits, but they have that account code. Going down, legal used to be just that one line item was legal. We've renamed that across every department to say legal, engineering, and professional services. The next one is for travel meetings. And one of the things that was missing is trainings. So we have been paying for, like, Sam has been going to these clerk classes. They've been really, really good for her growth as a town clerk. And we want to make sure that we've got an accurate description for those funds. So we've added that. One of our utilities is telephone. Well, yeah, we do have a telephone bill, but we also have internet. So telecommunications and internet are in one. And then the two that are added are really capital outlays. And so previously it had been transfers. That section was specific to transfers. We've added it for capital outlays. Those are like building improvements, things that result in a capital asset, machinery and equipment, things that can be depreciated. And so now there's a line item specific to that instead of trying to purchase them out of operating expenses, right? Because they're not operating expenses, they're a different type of expense. And so those are two new account codes that we'll see going into fiscal year 24. And that's generally how I produce a budget. It's as straightforward as possible. And if there are any notes or a capital improvement plan that matches up to it, that'll be added as an addendum to a budget. Are there any questions on that budget process?
I'm really glad to see that individual departments aren't allocated certain amounts of the sales tax. I'm assuming that what we're going to see is here's the sales tax amount. Here's what's happening with sales taxes. Here's what's happening with property taxes. What it was before is they were allocated among the departments, which the departments don't generate that stuff. It just didn't make sense.
Yeah. So I should have put up the revenue side as well, so you can see what our revenue looks like. Really, for the general fund, it's a bottom line revenue number that gets dispersed among all of the general fund debiting departments. And so as long as that number balances out to zero or there's a surplus, we don't need a budget amendment. It's balanced. Now, for example, if you look at this, you go, hey, well, the town administrator's salary is much higher. Well, that's, is much higher than $42,000. That's because there's a fixed allocation. And so in the personnel spreadsheet, it's broken down by a fixed allocation for how much of my salary comes out of the general fund, out of enterprise utilities, and it's broken down that way. And so a lot of our public works department is also broken down like that. But it's the appropriate way to do it when you're trying to pay for an employee who isn't just paid from the general fund, but also from enterprise utilities. The only department that really doesn't have to go through any other enterprise utility unless they wanted to become meter maids is the police department. And I don't think that we want to do a pay for parking program. So Matt's budget was really easy to manage because we didn't have to do those fixed allocations. And by the way, putting fixed allocations into Cassell is really an easy task. It's even easier in ADP, and Sam's got that down like a professional. So, but that's kind of what you'll see in a budget. If there's historical information, I may include that, but I don't want to get heavy on some of the fluff for my first budget with the town. I want you to see kind of the foundation for what could become a budget that I'm hoping would end up getting a designation from the Government Finance Officers Association for Colorado. But first, there's going to be a foundation, a building time, and that's what this upcoming fiscal year is going to be.
Yeah, so you brought up ClearGov. So I want to ask you more about ClearGov. So we've had that module or that software, and we've only used it for showing the budget, pie charts, graphs. Is ClearGov still useful for the budget now that we're using Cassell?
So I think so. I think it'll be with this format, it's a lot easier to upload because it is. I do have it in a spreadsheet, right? So the budget's actually a spreadsheet budget that has these account codes in it. And it'll be really easy to upload it so that transparency module it still holds value.
Okay.
Absolutely.
A follow-up to that, there is a module in there for checking for all spending to go into this separate database. Very labor intensive, I would think, but maybe not with Cassell, which could be very helpful. It just didn't get populated.
I see.
So I didn't know if you have looked at that and if there needs to be a discussion as to whether that is also put into practice.
Yeah, I'm pulling it up right now so I can see what modules we currently are subscribed. We're subscribed to capital budgeting, the digital budget book, transparency, and a new one called Clear Plans. And so Clear Plans is something that I intend to use in fiscal year 24 that and it'll be in this budget, that includes grant management to help with, tracking those funds that are coming in from external, from supplemental revenue sources.
Well, I guess time will tell if this checkbook thing sounds like it's not in there. I don't remember. I just know it as a checkbook. You remember?
Yeah, I do remember what it is. One of the selling points for ClearGov is that a person from the public could go into ClearGov and they could actually see every check that was written. They could see all the disbursements, those types of things. And that was the piece that was very attractive. I thought that'd be really great. People that are at the meetings that don't see the disbursement sheets could then just go online and look at how we spend our money. So that was the module.
I think that what we're talking about is
Transparency.
the transparency module. And so I just went into it. It looks like it's set up, but nothing's been populated into it yet.
I have a question about the designation that you'll be going for. Can you just give me a little bit of background on that?
Yes, so the Government Finance Officers Association has a designation for good budgets, municipal budgets that are really the benchmark achievement for local governments with like transparency, easy to understand budgets that don't hide anything, right? And so they've got a set list of criteria that I'd really like to go for, but I don't see it happening in fiscal year 24. I would see this as being more of a foundational building, moving towards that designation.
Great, thanks.
Any other questions from the board? Okay.
So also I've attached the local government budget calendar. And then the most exciting part of this report are the next 2 pages. And so it's what our Public Works Department has been completing, not just in water and wastewater, but really doing a lot of park upgrades, winterizing, repairing potholes. But most importantly, our water department has moved forward with replacing a lot of outdated meters with radio reads. They've been hitting it hard with some of our water companies and putting in, I think, replacing PRVs and adding, replacing outdated meters, working on meter pits and vaults. And so Corey gave me like 50 pictures and I could only choose some of the most important, the ones that were most visually pleasing, I suppose. But included those with what they've been doing. One of the biggest projects that had been kind of a back burner project, but is really important, has been flow testing fire hydrants. And they have really hit this hard. So in every jurisdiction I've been in, it's always been the fire department that has worked at flow testing for their own records, but they've also been departments of the town or the city. And here, we've got a separate taxing district, and that's our fire department, and they do a really good job at responding. But it really should be up to us to make sure that when they go to a fire hydrant, just by looking at the color of the hydrant or a band around that hydrant, they know how much water is coming through, to help with a fire. This is even more important with what's happened in Delta. That's like every town and city manager's worst nightmare is a fire in your central business district. So taking care of this is a huge deal, and they took it upon themselves to do it. I think Corey went to an after action report and said, hey, we should probably look at fire hydrants and did it. So
it kind of came about just, we needed to flow test a bunch of them, and some of them, there's no real records of the last time they were flow tested. So we're trying to do it and get them to where we do it on a normalized schedule. We just figured since we're doing it, we might as well get that out of it instead of just wasting the water.
And so hopefully down the road, so flow testing meters is a big part of your ISO rating. The lower your ISO rating, the better your insurance scores. And so hopefully with this data, it can be given to the fire department when they go for their next ISO rating, and could help with insurance. I don't know. Another big part is keeping training records for firefighters, and then how far a property is from a fire hydrant. So they do a good job at taking care of most of that. We're just trying to do our part to make sure that they've got the information that they need. Like I said, big a lot of work done on revenue protection for the water department. So making sure that, those old flip meters are turned to digital radio reads, and that those internal components are accurately reading the amount of water flowing through a meter. Again, revenue protection is really important. It's one of my biggest concerns, is making sure that we continue to have the revenue coming in, especially with the capital outlays we're looking at putting out the next 20 years. Between September and October, our water department hit 6 water leaks between Crest Haven and Silo Corner. So is that steel?
That's the line.
That's part of phase 2 with our water main replacement. So they've been working to do repairs along that line. They've done PRV repairs, and which is really important to make sure that backwash doesn't contaminate our drinking water supply, and making sure that they're in good repair. And then they also, as mentioned, alluded to earlier, they did purchase a tool that helps them break those connections apart to help them get into a PRV and
I
replace.
don't know if any of you guys have ever seen a flange to flange to flange, that everything's flanged. There's hardly no give, so getting the last gasket in. Sure.
But they've got a tool now that they were all excited about getting. So I can't imagine why. But while they're doing this, they're also gathering data for our design engineers, for the work that we're doing, for grants that we're going after, and then also making improvements to the water treatment plant. So these are all above and beyond from their normal daily chores, making sure that operations are happening. This is kind of the stuff that I find exciting that our guys are doing above and beyond. And so you can see that they're actively working, and sometimes it may require all hands on deck from the Public Works Department to make sure that a water leak is repaired. And, so if you do see some overtime, chances are it was a leak in that steel pipe that needed immediate attention. Our streets and parks department or divisions, they've really been working as well. So these pictures kind of tell the story. There was a pipe in Apple Valley Park that now has a fence around it. You can also see in Apple Valley Park that a retaining wall was put up where a shed that was hit by a car was removed, and a new shed's on its way. But that new retaining wall is kind of a blank canvas that some ideas were thrown around. Maybe it's a prime location for a mural. Great idea. So those things are also happening. They're repairing potholes. They're winterizing. They're removing graffiti, and I think they just worked with the county to pave the 100 and 200 block of Niagara Avenue. So we couldn't do Samuel Wade Bridge again with another overlayment of asphalt because there's a lot of weight on that bridge. And so if we were to do another 2 to 3 inch overlay, it might result in a weight restriction on the bridge. So we're going to have to design it or go to an engineer and a mill and resurface it down the road. They hit it?
Yeah. We'll just continue to try to keep up with the potholes on it for now.
Yeah. And so part of the things that Corey's been doing with his department is being pretty proactive. In this past winter, they noticed at our water fill station that it would ice up and it would be really hard to unlock or free shed. And so they built an enclosure for it to make sure that doesn't happen again for anybody using the water fill station. So it's smaller things like that really are a big deal. Again, revenue protection, things like that. So, and then the most important thing is the leaf vac will be trekking through town. So watch for an announcement on social media and the website. They've been hitting it hard.
Okay, yes.
So I have a question, where do all the leaves go?
So we try to take them around. Like last year, we kind of did a sign up, people that wanted some would come put their name down, and we would try to just coordinate to drop some off to them if they want for composting. The only thing I want to say is leaf vac don't really discriminate on what it picks up. So I can't promise that all you're getting is leaves. And we're kind of limited on where we can back things into, we can dump them off somewhere as long as they can just kind of pull the trailer in and dump them out, but.
I'm not asking for myself. I have plenty of leaves at my house, but I know other people would love to have access. So will there be something when you get started for you, so you can decide if it's even something you can do?
Yeah, I think the sign up sheet did good. We just kept it out here and they would just leave their name and their number and roughly how much they wanted, and
It's nice.
we just kind of did it by whoever signed up first, that was kind of the first call.
So we could put that out in the announcement as well, that there's a sign up sheet, come sign up at town hall.
Do you have something to ask?
Okay.
Anyone else? All right.
The safety rails as well that are going up, like on Main Street, I think are really important and have been needed. So, and by the way, that was all scrap steel that they fabricated. It looks incredible. So we've got some pretty good fabricators, carpenters, and equipment operators in town. Need a concrete guy.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Steph. Very good. All right.
Couldn't have done it without help.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. All right. You're up, Chief Levenger.
Yeah, a couple things I'll hit on. Mountain Harvest Fest was successful. It was a really safe weekend. Just thank you to everybody who turned out, participated in that, helped put that on. Those of you guys bring a lot of people to town, so thank you to everybody for keeping it safe. Some of the other highlights I'll hit on, our service tech did some training on sealing and expunging records, which is becoming very popular. We're getting a lot of those requests. And so moving forward, now that we have that training, we'll be following those best practices to make sure that we're in compliance. And then the other thing I'll add is our two officers did complete our crisis intervention training. They're both certified now, so we're very happy to have them certified in that, help our mental health and what the escalation calls. That's kind of what I got, unless somebody else has questions.
Any questions for the chief? All right, seeing, oh, yeah.
I just have a question. So on here, it says new body cams are being issued and training completed. Did we have old body cams?
Yeah, so we have a contract with the company that provides us different generations of body cam. And so we have those, and now we go through a training on those to issue new body cams. With new body cams, they just have different features depending on which generation it is. A lot of the focus will be on better low light visibility, higher resolution, so we can see some of the older body cam footage you'll see in videos is very grainy. You really can't see much outside of just right here. The newer body cams have a little better lens on them, better audio, and we can sync them up to different equipment as well. The one thing we found with the body cams is we were contracted for 5 body cams and we'll need 6. So we'll be looking at that, modifying that contract on what that cost will be moving forward. That same contract addresses our TASER program as well. So we'll look at that as we move forward over time, but we wanted to get the cameras we have now in service and get everybody trained on those.
All right. Let's move on then to Public Works. Do you have anything to add? Oh, I am sorry.
Well, I just thought it would be helpful for the audience if they looked at your blotter, just to know that there's now new acronyms under the, assuming that DSP is dispensation column on the right hand side.
Dispo column, and I provided a list of dispositions up there that are available to us through our computer-aided dispatch system, and it will list all those. The previous format we were using for the blotter listed the dispositions that we were using on that blotter, so they were available. We went to a new format here, which quite frankly, I don't like as well. So we'll probably go back to the older format that you had been receiving, and on that will be the glossary. In the meantime, you do have a list We don't use all these dispositions, some of them we've never used to my knowledge, but they are available to us.
All right. Next up, anything to add to all the praise given to you by Steph Moncory?
A whole lot to add. They do good work, so.
We're still hiring.
Okay.
It's still an open position.
Excellent.
Is that, is it a trash store that we were hiring for? Is that still the, okay, yeah. Okay.
Still open.
All right, so next up on the agenda then is consideration and approval of resolution 2023-16 opposing proposition HH. Mr. Wynn.
Yeah, and I'm going to let Nick jump in as well, since he cleaned up the resolution that was provided to us by the Colorado Municipal League. I attended the quarterly municipal meeting for Delta County, was the last weeks are rolling in together. I think it was last week. And one of the things that came on the table was majority of those communities in Delta County are looking to do a resolution to oppose Proposition HH. And part of it is that the state legislature, the CML opposes it because of the unnecessary restrictions that it places on local governments. So it's kind of preempting what you could give for a property tax exemption and saying, no, you're going to give this, instead of allowing individual jurisdictions to decide what those exemptions would be. For us, it does have a real life, budget consequence. So it would take our property tax revenue from about 195,000 and reduce it to, I think it was 164, 165. So there is, if Prop HH does pass, it does have an implication for us with our general fund.
All right, questions from or comments from the public? Okay, seeing none. From the board, yes. Oh, I am sorry, Ms. Becca.
I know you're going to ask a question. Oh, Tammy Mack, I'm here with the shopper, High Country Shopper. Will Administrator Wynn's reports be online at some time soon? Is that what you were working on, or is that, okay?
I had to remember my usernames.
That was my only question. It'd be really nice to have those online.
Thank you. All right, yes, Mr. Val.
So, well, a lot has been said, and a lot is being said about this. If nothing else, as a voter, I've tried to wade through it all. What I got out of all that was that HH cuts back it's even stated as such here, cuts back on the amount of tax revenue we would have gotten otherwise. So the misconception is it would cut back but statewide, people are saying it would cut back what we get by 65%. No. It would cut back the increase by 65%. So my concern is in the context of assessments having gone way up, apparently. I'm not sure what they did here, but in Denver, it's breathtaking. And we have a lot of low income and elderly people here. And I was looking at this as not really a fix in my book, but at least amelioration for that increase. So that the private equity firms in Texas who are sitting around waiting for the properties that come available and turn them into Airbnbs get less of a chance as people, fold their hand and sell. So why would our intake go from I forget which, it's 195
195
down to 164. I would think, from everything I've read, it would go up from 195, but not as much as it would have.
I'm gonna pull up the county assessor's memo. Give me 1 second. So what they did is they addressed that. They said, look, if Prop HH does pass, here's what you would expect, and it was a reduction in property taxes revenue. So give me 1 second.
So while he's doing that, could I add something?
Yeah.
Well, I went through the proposition. It is really hard to understand, reading through it. The blue book, if you got it in the mail, oh my gosh. But what my takeaway was that people who own property will see a reduction in their property taxes, but people who pay state taxes and have been getting Tabor refunds, those go away, is what I'm getting. So the average person who doesn't own property is not going to get a Tabor refund. So it's this whack-a-mole thing that's going on with this. And yes, it might help homeowners reduce their property taxes, but that's not everybody in the state. Whereas I own property and I got a Tabor refund. So I'd rather see a Tabor refund personally than my property taxes reduced and other people not get a Tabor refund. You know, if you're looking at it from the income perspective. So that was just my takeaway from it.
Can I make a correction on that?
Yeah.
There's not a reduction in property tax. That's a misconception. There's a reduction in the increase.
In that revenue.
Yeah, wrap your head around that. There's a reduction in the increase, not a reduction. So,
It looked like a reduction on those tables. You don't think so? The tables that are in
there's so much
the,
stuff out there. I mean,
I don't know. All right, let's get that.
Let's-
Yeah, so in the spreadsheet that the assessor sent to us, it has it says net revenue reduction estimate of $33,757. And in their memo, they explain kind of how their calculations work, and it says, let's see. To help you decipher the spreadsheet, here are a few key points. Cell 018 is your estimated assessed value if Proposition HH passes. The net assessed value that was reported in the August 25th certification of values is located in cell B24. That was higher than what this new spreadsheet shows. The lower portion of the spreadsheet contains calculations for the backfill procedure. I've inserted notes in the spreadsheet for further explanation. If Proposition HH does not pass, the backfill amounts will be based on the information found in Senate Bill 22-238. Please note that the spreadsheet is both vertical and horizontal scroll bars. It is, in essence, you'll have to create two budgets. So that's one if Proposition HH does not pass, and one if Proposition HH does pass.
oh, that explains it.
Yeah, you will have to adjust your mill levies accordingly. Also, there's a property tax limitation that you should be aware of if Proposition HH passes. And the limitation can be found on page 9 following of the Senate Bill 2333. If you this is their little note. If you have not read Senate Bill 23303, I would advise you to do so, as there are many items that may affect your entity. And I can tell you I haven't read it in its entirety. I have also attached the new dates that items must be done for certification should Proposition HH passes. It extends deadlines for all of our benefit. Please feel free to call the assessor's office with that. So essentially, we're creating two budgets. One if HH doesn't pass, and we can go with that nicer assessed value, and then one if Proposition HH does pass.
And we can worry about that, and we can worry about Tabor refunds. But as I see it, the whole picture, the end of that sentence is always dropped, and that's at the expense of low-income people. So I'm going to vote no.
Trustee.
There's two decisions we're trying to make here. One is town's interest in getting in there. There's a second decision that I'm not clear on, and that is, how does it affect an individual who is, what is concrete? What concretely happens to someone that's a renter? What concretely happens to someone that's a property owner? Like a property owner, what I think I'm hearing is that my tax bill was, let's say, $2,000 next year. Instead of it going from 2,000 to 2,500, it's now going from 2,000 to 2,200. Is that right? Okay. If I'm a person that's renting, normally after they figure out the state budget and all this junk, if there's a Tabor refund, even as a renter, I might get a check. But if HH passes, I wouldn't. Is that right?
Yes.
Because, my vote, I'm trying to balance, what's the interest of the citizens? What's the interest of the town? And I'm wondering if there's a competing interest here.
The other question is, it says that, scroll. HH puts unnecessary constraints on municipal authority to provide appropriate localized property tax relief. So for this on, do we have a localized property tax relief plan in mind that would be inhibited?
No, so the third bullet on this resolution is, what it does is it would permit the state to retain money that would otherwise be refunded to taxpayers. That's what we're talking about. Tabor refund, but to be used for education. So even if that revenue could go to municipalities to help with our the calculations for how much we can be loaned for projects. That would instead go towards education to help with offsetting the cost of student enrollment numbers going down or something. And, it also talks about that it could also be used for rental assistance programs. I'm assuming similar to, things that CHAFA operates.
The other thing that put it in context for me, there have been a series of shows out of Denver with various folks weighing in, and a couple of folks have said, look, this whole system is so screwed up. If this passes or doesn't pass, they're still going to have to fix it. So that takes in my mind, takes a little bit of pressure off the idea that this is the last word. This is the fix.
Yeah, and I think to kind of add a little bit of context to Trustee Knutz's point, there's no direct relationship to the amount of money that we wouldn't receive as a government and the amount of money that our citizens would save. Right. And so thinking about our community, we're not necessarily going to be saving our citizens $30,000 in taxes. Right. And part of the one piece of this last bullet point that Mr. Wood didn't read was part of the money that the state government will retain will be used for partial reimbursements to local governments for reduced property tax revenue. And so they're going to reduce property tax revenue and then take money that would have gone to Tabor checks to pay governments to kind of bump up that property tax revenue again. It's this weird circuitous loop that gets Tabor funds redirected from citizens and also people who own a certain level of property to get less taxes. And so yeah,
and then the crazy part to me too is besides that, when it comes back to redistributing those funds, little bitty towns like Paonia, are we going to get anything near or anything at all from that redistribution? Generally the little bitty towns tend to get left out of that calculation. Yeah, Trustee Knudsen.
So question before us is whether we urge our fellow citizens to vote no. And I'm, whenever I see ballot propositions personally that I don't understand, I tend to vote no. So I'd like to make a motion that we, see if I can find it, approve resolution 2023-16, opposing proposition 18.
We have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor? Opposed?
Nay.
All right, that motion passes. All right, moving on. Is approval to submit a water smart water strategy planning grant.
Oh,
And they're done now. All right, next. So I'm in the process of writing this thing. It's due on October 17th. We do have the grant, the total project to do this comprehensive water plan will be $500,113. We do have matching funds in the amount of the hydrogeology study, which we have been granted from the CWCB and the Colorado Water District and the Gunnison Basin. And that's in the amount of $297,000 and no, it's almost $250,000. I think there's like a $2,170 difference that the town will have to pick up on matching funds, along with the $115. So anyhow, so what this will bring us is that it will allow us to do a full comprehensive plan of our water system, beginning at the watershed, way up above, looking at all the infrastructure, everything that's going on in the water system, bringing it all down through the distribution pipes or through the collection pipes to the water plants into the distribution system in the town, looking at all the out-of-town water users, all the in-town water users. It's also going to bring into the picture the out-of-town water companies, the farmers and the ranchers who are grazing their cattle up there, the ditch companies. Everybody's going to be part of this plan. And so it's a good benefit to the town. Not only is it going to give us a big comprehensive plan that we can work off of it, it's going to give us the first step to then applying for other federal grants, especially Water Smart grants. Okay. Comments from the public? Yes. Ms. Kent.
Chris Kendall, Minnesota Creek Road. I would like to say, at first I was kind of leery of it. It sounds like it's a good deal. The problem I have with it is Mary didn't call me till Saturday.
Yeah.
And I have a big problem with that because I am a secretary for 3 water companies and I will not, and I don't think any of us should do, or any of the water companies should sign something without knowing more about it. And also, like, I don't feel like I have the full say on that because I have a president and a board also that I have to acknowledge and do. So I would appreciate anytime we do grants and you want to include the water companies, please give us more time so that we're not going, what are we doing this for? Because you know me, I'm kind of a stickler on these things. I like to know what we're doing. And I like to know why we're doing it and where we're going to be. And that was the main thing tonight is I wanted to hear exactly why the water companies would want to give you stuff and what we would, because I don't think all the water companies understand, because I had a couple call me and ask, what is this for? And one said, well, her secretary was all gung-ho for it because it's going to help us get new water lines. But that's not what this is for. It is essentially the overview, but it isn't what you're doing now. It's going to be for the geological study and all that, putting maps together, right?
I'll address that in a minute.
No, but and that's what we need to know before we say yes. on any kind of, we have to have these answers. Does that make sense? And so I would appreciate if you want to do a grant, please give us time so that we can go to our water companies and our people and do it correctly. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Kendall. Anyone else? Yes, Ms. Patterson.
Shane Patterson, Rio Grande. I'm not talking specifically about the funding for the water projects and things like that. I'm talking about this is why, and it covers this Tabor thing, the HH. With this, this is why we need to cut back on our expenditures. Now here at this level, at the county level, at the state level, at the federal level, because that's what's raising all our taxes. And that's what, if we cut back on our expenditures, the frivolous stuff, and get back to basics, we wouldn't have these issues of, oh, do we reduce Tabor, or do we get, give this, or they're not getting their share, and stuff like that. So I'm just saying, free money is not free.
Thank you, Ms. Patterson. Anyone else? All right. Questions from the board? Yes.
Me first.
Tracy.
I'm curious about how I'm worried about the hydrogeological study being impacted by this grant. Is the money from the that H study, is that, you say you're going to use it as matching funds, I'm afraid that it's going away from the study. That's what I wanted to make sure that we're really clear on, because that study is so important about knowing what's the hydrology there, what's the geology, do we have springs that can produce? And to me, that's really the number one. So if the fact that we've been given that money as a chunk, that's considered a match, but we don't have to impact the study, I'm fine. But if it impacts that study in any way, then I'm really very.
No, actually, the hydrogeology study is a big study of the watershed.
Right.
So half of the money so the whole project, we're asking for half of the money from the Bureau of Revenue. So that first half of that money, that hydrogeology study, is written into the grant narrative as the big piece up on the mountain. It's looking at the geology of the mountain up there. That's piece one of the whole entire plan study. It's part of the technical background of this plan.
So that's why it's considered matching.
Right, because it's a piece of the entire plan study. Yeah.
If you could just clarify, you're saying that the hydrogeologic study is a portion of the WaterSmart study.
Yeah, it's
So
integral.
you are looking at having an umbrella for WaterSmart and another grant for the hydrogeologic study with a particular contractor doing that piece. So I don't understand what the rest of the WaterSmart grant is. Do we need another contractor that's looking at our existing infrastructure?
Yes.
And then working with this hydrogeologic contractor? And we're not actually losing money, except we are going to have to pay out of our budget? How much?
About $2,170, I believe.
Oh, that's all?
Yeah.
If all this comes to, okay, thank you. So we have chosen our hydrogeologic contractor, correct?
No, we haven't put out the RFP yet.
Okay, and then, okay, no, that's all right. I'm trying to keep this straight. I would love some kind of a flow chart of what is going on with all of our projects. And where is that? Can we find that on the website?
I will make it more front and center. I've got to update this graphic. So the DOLA has said, sorry, it's over $100,000. That's off the table for that DOLA strong communities. But other than that, this graphic right now is in my last report.
Oh, yes. Okay.
And I'll make this a little more easier to access on the website.
Because to me, I'm losing track of which grants we're doing when, really, and I kind of had a handle on it, but I don't anymore. And this isn't quite enough. I mean, I like this, but we need to know, okay, hydrogeologic to me is at the top of the Christmas tree. We got to get that answered. And then, and it sounds like Water Smart becomes one and the same. The two are done simultaneously and those contractors talk. We still have to do an RFP for the Water Smart. If we get it, these two talk. So we get that all going on. And now and I'm seeing a lot of invoices from Respect, and they're working on the 2 million gallon tank relining.
The SRF one.
Yes, so it'd be really nice to know where we are with that too. We're spending a lot of money on the contractors. It'd be nice to know how that is coming to fruition for a grant for the 2 million, for instance. So if we could, keep talking more about how many plates do we have spinning for grants and for projects, and are we getting some completed? And I almost would like to recommend that the JDS report really, I thought, was put together in a really cogent way in terms of the pieces that need to get fixed. I may be wrong, but it made sense to me. PRVs, pipes. So if there's a way to somehow use that as the skeleton for explaining where we are, would that help?
And in truth, you're exactly right. And that is part of the skeleton that will be used to flesh out, because I've been talking to James from JDS a lot about this, and he's helping with this. And that is because there are pieces that are missing from that. And there are in-depth things that need to be gone into that study could not do.
Mm-hmm.
And there's the input from the water companies and from the ranchers and everything else that needs to be brought into that as well. And we're also going to look at climate change mitigation up in the watershed. No, they did not address at all. We're looking at wildfire readiness up in the watershed that they did not look at all. So we've got pieces and parts that, we're expanding our water rights investigation in this grant too. So there are things that are out there that we weren't able to address with that study, that this is going to build upon to make it more complete.
All right, so if you can make it so we can all follow it, that would be great.
It's hard. It's really.
Thank you.
Mayor, if I may.
Yeah.
So how about my November administrator's report? I'll add more in depth on some of the projects that we're working on that are grant funded. And I'll make sure that that's highlighted in the next report. Like 3 weeks.
You mentioned, can you remind me of the deadline that you mentioned for the application of this grant?
October 17th.
17th, and is that a hard deadline?
No, yeah. The
Okay,
portal closes down, you're done.
Okay.
4:00 Eastern Standard Time. I'm sorry, you're not doing that. And
No, I just want to say you did not add one allotment on there. You added West Elk, but you did not add the Dry Fork allotment.
okay, well, we'll talk later.
Okay.
Great application.
So Mayor, if I can, we also learned about this Water Smart grant pretty late. And we had to jump through some hoops with their coordinator at the federal level to help us understand and to make sure that what we were looking for would fit into their program. And after that meeting, we were pretty excited that it sounded like it could help supplement this cost to finish the hydrogeological study and then move that into actionable items. That's what this grant is going for. So we realize that we're asking at the last minute to try to give letters of support, but that's really going to be what drives this grant application to the top of the heap, is that we're the most complicated water rights in the state of Colorado is also working with those, groups that help make us the most complicated water rights.
So we only have been doing this since the 1st of October. Really, when we had our call with the Department of Reclamation to start this process. So this has been a dead run to get this thing done.
And really, it was when we learned that DOLA said, we're not going to give you $25,000 because we were looking for other ways to supplement.
I have a question about when will we find out if we get the grant? And will we be waiting on doing an RFP for the hydrologic study until we find out if we get this?
No, I don't think we're going to wait on the RFP for the hydrogeologic study. And then the woman we talked to at the Department of Reclamation, we're fine. if we're already running that study, we're fine on it to be the match because it is an integral part of it.
So that was a specific question I asked, because I'm used to, you don't go, enter into a contract with somebody until you get an NTP, a notice to proceed. And she said it's not gonna, she goes, that's not true. That's, for this grant, it's not true. You can be moving forward with whomever you choose for your hydrogeological study, and it's just gonna, it's okay. I believe her.
Yeah, I mean, she knows, and you should find out July 5th, 2020.
Okay, and I guess if there's anything that we need to change in that RFP, if we do get this grant, then we would just add on.
Right.
For the
Good news is-
hydrologic study.
I haven't written the RFP yet, so. there's
But
plenty of time.
and the truth of the matter is, they can't do the big portion of their work until spring.
Yeah.
Because they can't get on the mountain. So they can do some background work, but they can't really get up there and drill their holes and all the stuff they have to do until spring.
May I ask another question? Okay, so in relation to our domestic water companies and giving them time to get the, I'll finish. So are there things like, I get that, I've been on irrigation and domestic water companies and you have to go through the process and we may not be able to get everybody. Is there anything, I guess, what is my question? Like, is that going to be acceptable? If we only got like a few of them, but we could still include them after the fact when we get the grant.
Absolutely. All that I'm asking for now is letters of support from as many as I can get.
Gotcha.
When we start the grant process, they are going to reach out to every single water company and they're going to do a plan. And then they're going to include every single water company into the process. All we're trying to do now is get as much support ahead of time as we can and understand in really short period of time,
Yeah.
I didn't get even the list of the water companies until the middle of last week. So that's when I started calling as soon as I got the list of who they were. So.
Cool. Well, that just makes me glad that all the water companies will be included in this if we get it, even if they don't get the.
I realized that it is a short period of time and they have a process. And so if they can't, they can't. And I appreciate that. And in the grant, it states, we reached out to everybody. They didn't have an opportunity to be able to respond to us, but they have been contacted.
And we hope that they'll say yes.
Yes, and we hope that they will say yes and be part of this plan because it's integral to the system and they need to be.
Thanks.
Okay, any other questions, comments? Okay. Would anyone like to make a motion?
I'd like to make a motion that we approve submittal of the Water Smart Water Strategy Planning Grant.
All right, a second?
A second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, that motion passes. All right, let's move on to ratification of approval for emergency sewer line repairs at emergency meeting. Mr. Witt?
So there's an additional staff report to the other staff reports for each individual item. And, during the last emergency meeting, thank you, by the way, for meeting on such short notice to make sure that we could get these guys, on site as soon as possible. The first one was an emergency meeting to approve the quote for repairs for Main Street for the sewer collapse. From Root Excavating, you did make a motion and approved it for a not to exceed amount of up to $75,000. We're ratifying that decision today. And then the other was to allow to approve the camping in Apple Valley Park for BLM volunteers. That work's already done, so thank you for doing that. And in the future, we may look at an ordinance change to allow for certain conditions that could be administratively approved for camping in parks, that for similar situations. So we don't have to have purchase meetings.
Okay. Comments from the public? Okay, seeing none. Anything from the board? Okay, can we get a motion to approve?
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion that number one, we approve the quote for repairs and Root Excavating with not to exceed price of $75,000. And number two, to approve workers camping in Apple Valley Park on Friday October 6th and October 7th, 2023.
All right, do I have a second? Second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? All right, that motion passes. All right, next, approval of a memorandum of understanding with the Department of Revenue for retail marijuana sales access or tax access.
That is all our town clerk.
All right, town clerk.
I really don't have anything to add other than going in there. Normally, I think this could have, in the past, I think this is our finance director. I just think with the new budget things going in, so much restructuring this year that it makes more sense to have our town administrator have it. We have to redo it every year. I just think with all the budgets and all the grants and everything that's going on, that he's probably the best choice to have that access because only one person can. Just because of the confidential nature of the information, like you can put out what kind, like a whole amount of revenue, but you can't on an individual basis, an individual business basis and stuff. And it just makes the most sense for this year at least, that it be our town administrator.
Disagree. No, I'm just.
I just say so, it should have been this report.
Okay, any comments from the public? Okay. From the board? Yes, trustee King.
Well, this is kind of like sidewalks. I think a lot of citizens I hear from say they would like to know, what sidewalks have been improved. I think we're getting pretty close to getting a list of that, of what year and what's been done. So that's really nice. Same thing's happening with retail marijuana. We have not seen exactly how much money overall we've taken in and where the money's been spent. And so those two questions, now that we're on this agenda, it just begs that.
Yeah, if I can add to that, here's where my education at CMCA paid off this year. So I did all the panels with the marijuana enforcement division.
Louder, please.
Oh, sorry. I did all the panels with the marijuana enforcement division while I was at Institute this year. And one of the big things they were talking about is it's going to be these next 2 years that are really pivotal about retail marijuana sales, because now we're seeing a point where at first everybody was opening a shop and now so many of them are failing. People are walking away from businesses in the middle of the night and not even telling anybody. And so now it's going to start, probably in the next couple of years, we're going to see a lot of stabilization and have a better idea of what retail marijuana revenue is really going to look like. So I know that doesn't completely answer your question because I don't know that part of it, but I know we are going to be seeing a lot of changes, which is one of the other reasons why I thought it was a good idea for him. He's got more experience with following these budget things than a lot of us do right now who are new to our roles. We're still learning. I think he's going to be able to make more sense out of it for you and for the rest of us than we will be able to right now. So.
Trustee.
It really doesn't answer the question. The question is, how much money did we take in what years, and what did we do with it? That's the question.
I don't know.
Yeah,
Right, so we don't know.
Citizens want to know.
I'll have to run a report to see if we can find that information. This came up actually yesterday at our, so I visited the Senior Citizen Center, and this was one of the questions that came up because I think it was billed as pot for potholes.
Yes.
And so the big question was how much of this revenue has been actually used for street repairs? I don't know the answer to that. And I didn't have time to prepare for that today. So, but it's something I can definitely get hopefully for the final budget.
Okay, anything else?
If I could just add to that, so the occupational tax, which is the $5 per transaction, I think the 2023 budget at $190,000. I don't know where we are with it. And the tax we get from the state, I don't remember. And that should be in the revenue for the occupational tax has its, I can't remember which category it's in, but it seems to me we ended up spending $62,000 out of that for a recent repair. Anybody remember what that was for?
Engineering study.
Is that what it was?
For Fifth Street.
Okay, thank you. Yep, so that was used for that, and that just jogged my memory. It was for the engineering work that needed to be done for the Fifth Street repair.
Yeah.
We pulled 60 or 62,000 out of the occupational tax because it was with the street. So I don't know what's come in, you know, we haven't seen the revenue side. I can't remember where it is, but that's. And we, I think we're in the second year of collecting that tax. So none of it was spent last year to my knowledge. So it should have been rolled forward and we're adding to it. Anyway, that's what I recall.
All right, anything else on the memorandum of understanding? All right, can we get a motion?
Sure, I'd like to make a motion to approve town administrator Stephen Wynn under duress, signing the retail marijuana sales tax moratorium of understanding. Memorandum of understanding more. Why did I come up with that word?
Yeah.
Memorandum of understanding with the Department of Revenue for 2024.
Is there a second? Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, that motion passed. All right, next up on our agenda is an executive session. You get to do that one. It's a long one.
I know. I couldn't believe
Lucky
it.
guy.
Nick, thanks a lot.
Thank you for
Sorry about that.
So I'd like to make a motion that we move into executive session pursuant to CRS section 24-6-4, subsections 4E and 4F. For discussion of a personnel matter does not involve any employee who has requested discussion of the matter in open session. Any member of this body or elected official, the appointment of any person to fill an office of this body or of or personnel policies that do not require the discussion of matters personal to a particular employee, and for purposes of determining positions relative to matters that may be subject to negotiations, developing strategy for negotiations, and instructing negotiators relative to the terms and conditions of police chief's employment with the town and obligations of a certain former town employee under a training reimbursement agreement. This was written by the people that brought you Proposition HH.
Ooh, Nick, not
Hey, touche.
good. Do I have a second?
Sorry, Nick, no offense.
I'll second that motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, we are in an executive session. right, the time is now 8:57 PM and the executive session has been concluded. Participants in the executive session. Trustee Smith, trustee Valentine, trustee McGinnis, trustee Newton, trustee Swarth, town administrator Witt, and chief Lavender, and attorney Cotton Byas. And Mayor Backer. For the record, if any person who participated in the executive session believes that any substantial discussion of any matters not included in the motion executive session occurred during the executive session, or that improper action occurred during the executive session in violation of the open meetings law, I would ask that you state your concerns for the record. Hearing none, the next agenda item is adjournment. Did you want to do anything?
You have reports.
Oh, yeah. Does anyone have any reports they want to make? The mayor's report, I went to a river district meeting and I was very disappointed in the content. I think the best thing was when Senator Bennett came and did an armchair conversation with the moderator. And the basic thing they talked about was the farm bill. But I was not impressed with the quality of the presentation, so.
And then who was it?
Senator Bennett.
Oh.
And it was the River District, Colorado River District. So.
So was it just real fluffy?
It was, I was expecting a lot more real meat on what they were talking about and, advances on the river, or ecological stuff or whatever. I mean, they had an author come and talk about her voyage down the river, and it's like, okay, that's really interesting, and I'm glad you had a wonderful time, but what does this really bring to us education?
In terms of policy and
So.
fluff. Sorry, Autumn.
So anyhow, that was my big thing. Anybody else? Police, parks, finance?
I think we had a report, it's a written report, I don't know if it's in your record yet.
Okay. All right, if there's nothing else, now I will.
Could I just ask a question?
Yeah.
So do we still have a water sewer trash committee?
It has not really been revived. It would be probably Ms. Swartz or Trustee Swartz and Trustee McGinnis that would be on that committee. And I had briefly discussed it with Stefan, and he's basically saying, yeah, that's not. Not to give him any credit for this or not, but.
I only asked because, there were great, there was a lot of citizen exchange when we had the Water Advisory Committee, which was codified. And that has been disbanded, so there's now no forum for folks to learn about what's going on with the water. And I don't know what, sewer came up a little, trash never came up.
We're
But-
currently in the forum where.
Well, no, it was so much more detail and learning about where we were with goals, what in the JDS report. And we talked about, should there be a second tank? There were a lot of nuts and bolts that were talked about because the Advisory Water Committee had 4 goals. But that's gone now. And so that's kind of the reason I knew what was going on with the water system because I went to that meeting and I was chair for 2 meetings or so. So we had a wonderful forum that is now gone, which is why I'm going, what's going on? So to me, it's a big hole to not have some sort of a monthly public place discourse for people to ask questions and find out what's going on.
There's a bi-monthly place to get your questions answered, and those are called town council meetings.
There is no way to get your questions answered at these meetings. People can't get an answer. They can stand up there and they get 3 minutes and then they have to leave. That's not an exchange. These meetings are not that kind of public exchange that we had with the Water Advisory Committee. So I see a very huge lack, and I'm kind of sorry the Water Advisory Committee was disbanded because it did provide that monthly forum. But no, town meetings are not where people get information. We can't answer these people when they stand up.
It's not an exchange. Right, I disagree. Well, I agree that it's not an
So
exchange.
you're gonna leave before we adjourn?
I think we're gonna be adjourned, but probably by the time I walk up.
Well, why are you leaving? It's because you're
I'm
mad?
just packing up my stuff.
Okay.
No,
Oh,
I'm
couldn't tell you were
frustrated.
angry Because I'm saying, no, the public doesn't know what's going on. Anyway,
Well, and I think in a way, so it's kind of like the public affairs, the meets with the police. The public really doesn't come to that. There isn't a lot of information sharing. It's just between the police and the two committee members. Now, the parks, you go out to the parks and you do stuff and people show up for those committee meetings. So that's a little different. Or the finance committee that works internally and has tasks to do internally. In the case of the water, sewer and trash committee, you would have to be plugged into everything that's going on with the Public Works Department to be able to provide information that's going on, which means that you would have to meet with the Public Works people and catch up with them and see what's going on. I mean,
well, there were often a public works person at the water advisory committee meetings.
Yeah.
So that was the benefit that we had. Whether or not that was sanctioned, I don't know.
and were they being paid for their time to go to those?
I have no idea. I'm just saying there's a gap
So
and
in
my opinion.
yeah, and you know, what we've tried to fill that gap with some of the things that we've put out, like our departmental scorecards, these reports, and we can get more in depth as to what our infrastructure needs are. And start presenting that information more. I encourage anyone to come and talk or send an email. The last week, I've been a little lax in my replies to emails, but I'm working on some budget stuff. The bigger issue that we had that I think came out of that, that original water committee that you had brought up is that some decisions were being made by that committee that were directing staff to do things. And that undermined the town administrator position and caused some concerns with staff that borderlined insubordination. And so there was a baseline that was set that we're still trying to wrangle in with some employees. So
But that doesn't mean it's not still good to have a forum of some sort, because somebody sending you an email and you replying to them does not help anybody else who might have the same question.
Sure.
So if there's some way of some intermediate, I don't know, water sewer trash is a throwback from decades ago. And I'm not sure water sewer trash is even a good
2019.
No, that water sewer trash was used.
2019, I served on that committee.
Right, but all those committees, weren't they set up when there was no administrator, which is why their duties are far exceed what a trustee should do. That's clear. And that was kind of from Dave Weber's earlier days. So I'm just saying, I think the one thing we haven't done is we have all the old duties of those previous committees. And that we were asked to rewrite our goals, what we should be doing, which has been done, but I don't know if anybody knows what those are. But water, sewer, trash was never addressed. So I just feel like there's an opportunity to start something brand new.
And in truth, the other thing I have to say too is that after the water committee, the water advisory committee was disbanded, and they were just having their monthly water meetings. And I went to some of those monthly water meetings. And the information that was dispensed during some of those meetings was incorrect.
And are you talking about after the water advisory? You mean the meetings that continued after the water advisory was disbanded?
There was incorrect information being given out to people, and some of it was incendiary, and it was not good. It was absolutely not.
can I put out a suggestion that, so I'd like to bring this back to another board meeting for consideration, but we've been, in my past, I've been successful with quarterly roundtable meetings with department heads that operate more in a question ask kind of forum, more like a town hall style meeting. And they've been really helpful with getting out what projects are actually happening. And I would propose that we let us come back with a proposal where some department heads would agree to sit at, much like a table like this, where we'd sit up here and answer any questions that the public may have. But I propose at the max, it would be quarterly, right? So once every 3 months.
But with what's going on with, here's the other thing, we have these multiple projects that are starting to heat up. They're not here yet, but I think you might want to have more meetings to talk about the progress of those water-related grants and the information being done in quarterly. But for now, I would say, yeah, to me, that's a good start. But we need more, we just need more exchange on the water.
Yeah, and I don't know that, it seems like there's a lot going on. The thing is, there's a lot of little feet running in the background that it's just not coming forward. It's like all this stuff is going behind the scenes on the SRF, but nothing's going to move forward until we get the PNA done.
Well, what I'm saying, that's when the things start, all this paperwork's out there waiting to be approved. But once the paperwork's in and the contractors are hired, I think it's the time to start giving
That's
people
what we
more
have.
information. That's what I'm saying. I mean, right now,
That's not
it's,
going to be till next year.
it's, well, whatever, but people want to know. I mean, I want to know, and I'm a trustee and I don't know. So these meetings are somewhat informative, but not to the detail that I think people were used to getting, which isn't possible at these kind of meetings.
Right.
So I think a quarterly or whatever meeting would be a great improvement. Sounds like an agenda item to me.
Nick's got it.
Yeah, just one suggestion to the board based on Trustee Smith's comments, which I certainly understand. It's a common problem for municipalities to get information out and to use their government speech, right? There's narratives that float around that sometimes aren't accurate, rumors, so to speak. And so a lot of times it is important to get the government's own message out in a lot of ways. One thing about these highly technical issues, like water, you guys have hired consultants and contractors to do a lot of this work for you. And what a lot of municipalities will do is put in provisions having to do with public outreach and public presentation. How many meetings, for example, are you contracting with RESPEC or some, just to use an example? And, you can write those types of things into their scopes of work. Takes the burden off staff. You might pay a little bit more money, but when it's highly technical work like this, why don't you guys start, thinking about writing those kinds of responsibilities into your contracts? And that way you can dictate how many community updates that contractor will need to provide on specific issues that they're working on. So that could even be taken care of if you find money in the budget and you amend that contract, and you have the contractor do that if they're so willing. But that's just another potential option.
I appreciate you saying that, because just the idea of chairing that committee, I'm like, I don't know anything about this. I'm just gonna be spreading misinformation. So it's like, bring in and I don't wanna do that, obviously, potentially, but yeah, bringing in the experts to do it, the right people, having those right established forums. That to me makes a ton of sense, but having it in a time frame, and I know you'll come back with a proposal, something, shut up. And I would move to adjourn if this is.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
If that would work.
Okay, so I am going to adjourn this meeting. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.